As Jurgen Klopp prepares to lift the title with Liverpool, it's worth noting that it's his first championship since 2012. But where is that team now? Well, that's what we're going to look at today with a breakdown of Dortmund's championship winning side. So first up and in between the sticks, it's Roman Weidenfeller, who of course is now retired. During those 2 seasons in which they were back-to-back Bundesliga champions, he only missed 3 games and was definitely at the peak of his powers. Of course, in the years that followed, not only was he getting a little bit older, but the emergence of Roman Bürki meant that he didn't get so much game time. And even though he has retired and didn't play so much his last few years, well, he's still going to be a Dortmund legend. So much so, he actually scored a brace in his own testimonial. Into the right-back spot, and it's Lucas Piszczek. Now, if the name sounds familiar, that's because he's still playing at Dortmund. In fact, you're going to see that's quite a theme throughout the rest of this team. At age 34, he's gone from a right winger to a right back, and now he's part of a back 3 that Dortmund currently play. He joined the side when they were just on their meteoric rise from Hertha Berlin and has gone on, much like Weidenfeller, to become a club legend ever since. Into central defence now, and as someone who's actually still with Dortmund, although there was a bit of a hiatus to Bayern Munich in between on his footballing CV, and that is Mats Hummels. During his first stint with Dortmund, he was part of this title-winning side. That's why he's in this video. And he also only missed just 3 games in the whole season. He really was at the peak of his powers then and the years that followed, and it showed as well. In that summer, he went to the Euros with Germany and played in every single minute of their campaign. So after 7 years with the club, he then went back to Bayern, which is actually where he started. And then after Bayern, he went back to Dortmund, which is where he now is. Of course, we're not quite seeing the best Mats Hummels that we saw before, but he must be one of the only players in Bundesliga history to go back and forth from the same 2 clubs twice. Next up, and another one of these players that stuck around at Dortmund for quite a few years after their lofty heights of finishing first in back-to-back seasons. Although now Neven Subotic finds himself at Union Berlin. This was after a quick spell in France. At 31 years old, he's hardly old, and he's definitely an experienced and composed head in the Union back line as they face their first season in Bundesliga football. The other thing, though, is if they get relegated, he's probably a bit too big, certainly on a bit too much of a big wage, to be at the club. And if not, and they prove themselves to be not a powerhouse, but a strong outfit in the Bundesliga, they'll probably want to look towards the future, and I can't really see him lasting at the top level for too many years longer. Despite this, though, he's got some championship medals to look back on, so fair play to him. Into the left-back position, it's someone who spent his whole career at Dortmund, it's Marcel Schmelzer. Now, of course, much like Lucas Piszczek, he's still doing the bits for Dortmund, although maybe not as much as his defensive Polish counterpart. Schmelzer chips in here and there with the odd appearance, and he's still held as a massive authoritative figure in the squad. In fact, so much so that he was captain up until a few years ago. Despite the fact he doesn't really play, he's still Dortmund through and through, and that's kind of all there is to mention about a rare kind of player these days, a one-club man. Into midfield now, and we start off with a player whose career really took a big step up when he left Dortmund. Now, that's no shade on them, but I'll explain it in a minute. Anyway, İlkay Gündoğan joined the club as they started this brilliant rise up the table and won a title with Dortmund before staying for a few years more. In fact, they also won the German Cup as well in the 2011-12 season. He did actually score the penalty in the Champions League final, which gave them hope of a first Champions League title in around 17 years, but it didn't quite work out as Arjen Robben stole the show. Aside from that, though, he is now at Manchester City, where a new contract has seen him tied down in Eastlands until 2023. Now, the reason he made a big step up is because at the time, Dortmund finished second for absolutely everything. They haven't won the title since 2012, but they were finishing runners-up in the Cup as well and barely struggling to just get a German Super Cup under their belt. Such was Bayern Munich's dominance. So he left, moved to Manchester City where the Premier League titles and all the domestic trophies had followed, and even though their Champions League capabilities are questioned, City are probably set up for more success in the future than Dortmund are at the moment. I'm not calling them a small club, just saying that City probably have a lot more resources than Dortmund do. Anyway, and alongside İlkay Gündoğan was a player that you may actually not have heard of, and in fact he is currently retired. That is Sebastian Kehl. So if you haven't heard of him or you aren't well versed in the annals of German history in the Bundesliga, well, he was a defensive midfielder who basically won the ball back, turned over possession quickly and played it forward for this brilliant gegenpressing counter-attacking Dortmund side to do the business up front. Much like the job that Sven Bender did in the same role in this team, Kehl played a few more games than Bender did over the course of the season, so he makes it into this first team 11. Anyway, after that season, he stayed at Dortmund for a few more years, like most of them did, and then retired, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So into the attacking midfield 3 now, and on the right-hand side, this is where things get a little interesting with Jakub Blaszczykowski. So after staying at Dortmund for a few more years, there was a loan move to Fiorentina, which didn't really work out, and then a move to Wolfsburg. But that isn't the interesting thing for the Polish player. No. In January 2018, he was released from his contract with Wolfsburg and then went back to his first club, Wisła Krakow. You're probably thinking, yeah, that's a little bit odd to leave the Bundesliga for the Ekstraklasse, but the problem was that his former side, the side he started at, were in deep financial trouble. So not only did the winger go back to help them on the pitch, he also gave over 300,000 euros of his own money to help save the club, and then on top of that refused to take a salary as well. He is literally playing for free. I mean, they weren't quite the team they once were. In fact, when Błaszczykowski left Wisła Krakow, they were winning titles. Now, not so much, they're not doing so well, but still, for a heartwarming story in football that you don't really see these days, this one's quite a nice one. So into the number 10 role now, and although Mario Götze was arguably the one who went on to have a better career, the main star attacker in this Dortmund side was Shinji Kagawa. Now, a few brilliant years at Dortmund was followed by that move to Manchester United, and the first season he's under Sir Alex Ferguson, right? Even though that was Sir Alex's last season, he won the Premier League title, but after that, he was one of those to suffer under the coaching, let's say, of David Moyes. Basically, he had a few injuries, the season didn't go so well, and he went back to Dortmund. So after a return to Dortmund, things were going quite well. They knew about him. He was a great player, of course. And then it looked like Royce and Goethe were definitely going to get the lion's share of the minutes, which they did. So he went on loan to Besiktas. And then eventually now, he finds himself in the Spanish second division with Zaragoza. Now, I'm not saying that they're necessarily a bad team or a bad club, but surely Kagawa, the experience he's got, the skill and the ability that he's got, and he's only 31 years old, surely he can find a top flight club. There must be a team out there who's willing to take him on. It's not even like he's a kind of old lazy player. He could still bring so much to a team that I don't quite think he needs to be in the Spanish second division. Who knows, maybe he just likes the sun. So left side of the attacking three, and by far the most bizarre story in this team, and it's that of Kevin Grosskreutz. Now, throughout the seasons, around the time that Borussia Dortmund were dominating the Bundesliga, he played a massive part. In fact, he played nearly every damn position. The only positions he didn't fit in were centre-back and an out-and-out centre-forward. Including goalkeeper, he played in every single position on the pitch. So why is it now that he's in the third division of German football? So he stayed at Dortmund for a few more years, that's absolutely fine. Then things didn't quite so well towards his end of the time at the club, so he dropped down into their second team. After that, moved to Galatasaray, but it turns out he signed for the Turkish club after the transfer window had shut. There was a whole sort of argument about it. Fines had to be paid, Galatasaray was suspended from Champions League competition, and well, Grosskreutz couldn't play a game. A few months later, he moved back to Germany with Stuttgart, then to Darmstadt in the second division, and now finds himself at Erdingen in the third division of German football. I'm not trying to shit on it or anything. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's some good players in there, but surely for someone who spent the first part of the decade in the 23-man squad that won Germany's World Cup, winning Bundesliga titles with Dortmund, and up to a few years ago was definitely, in a top level team. How he's ended up here, I'm not quite sure. There were rumours that he got into a bar fight, and that's the whole reason that he was kicked out from Stuttgart, and well, he kind of fell out of love with football. Wherever he's playing, I just hope that he's happy. So lastly but not least, the goal-getter in this team, the star man, the guy putting the ball in the back of the net so many damn times, and he's still doing it, Robert Lewandowski. The man needs no introduction. You all know where he is right now. He's at Bayern Munich. He banged in the goals for Dortmund, he made the transfer to Bayern, and he's still smashing them in. In fact, if the year ended now, which most of us really do want 2020 to end, he'd be a shoo-in for the Ballon d'Or. And if you're watching this in the future and he hasn't won it, how on earth has that happened? What has his form done? Anyway, he's going to be scoring the goals at Bayern for a fair few more years to come, despite the fact he's in his early 30s. And yeah, well, he's pretty much dominated the Bundesliga for the whole decade. In fact, I think the seasons ending in 2010, 2013, and potentially 14 were the only years that he didn't win the Bundesliga. The rest of the time, it's just straight up medals for one of the greatest goal scorers that the game has ever seen. So there you have it, Jurgen Klopp's last title, winning 11. If you have to match up between the 2011-12 Dortmund and this year's Liverpool, who would win? That's what we're asking. I'm going to leave a poll right here. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Let me know all your thoughts on just how good this Dortmund team were. And of course, write them in the comment section down below. Smash the like button whilst you're there and click here or here to check out all of the other videos we've got going on Onefootball. But until next time, I will see you guys later.